Excellent. Let's begin. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're getting a great turnout to this webinar. My name is Jeff Besson. I'm the platform evangelist for Intuiface, and it's my pleasure to host an esteemed panel of BrightSign members to help introduce you to the world of BrightSign. On this call, we have a whole bunch of Intuiface users, Intuiface partners. Perhaps you've used Intuiface on a set of other supported player platforms. But the big news for our company, for Intuiface, over the past couple of weeks is our ability to introduce player support on BrightSign. And I would imagine that some of you are not familiar with BrightSign, and this is our opportunity to introduce you to them. I'm joined by three gentlemen, Frank Pisano, VP of Sales Americas, Pierre Gillet, VP of Sales International, as well as Romeo Lucina Babel, who is a technical support engineer. He will wow you with a little bit of a demo. As I kick things off, I want to make just a general point that you can do everything you've been able to do in Intuiface on our other 6 supported platforms. You can now do on our 7th supported platform. Okay, we've added it to the list. Everything you've grown accustomed to, you can do today on BrightSign. Why Intuiface for BrightSign? Well, because hopefully you know this, it's the unsurpassed ease and speed for digital transformation of that physical space. There are lots of digital signage CMSs out there, many platforms enabling companies to produce for themselves or for their clients traditional digital signage. But when you're transforming the physical space and bringing the notion of interactivity and real-time content delivery and analytics to your physical space, Intuiface is uniquely equipped to facilitate that. That's bringing multi-touch sensor support like Nexmosphere and computer vision to the BrightSign device, giving you access to very sophisticated interactive workflows without having to write any type of code whatsoever, no HTML expertise required. You control every single pixel of a project, right? This is about any design, any layout, any storyboard using your graphic media. You're not constrained to particular templates or some zone-based content distribution mechanism. With no coding, you can establish real-time connections to any cloud-accessible data source, business logic, and device, which is critical if you want to make sure that that interactive experience is personalized for the user in context. You need these connections to the cloud. They need to be real-time, and you can build that easily and quickly without writing code. And all of this is wrapped in the notion of data collection for analytics, so you can identify trends and achieve a deep level of business insight to make sure you're squeezing every ounce of value out of that deployment. So all of this that you've come accustomed to with Intuiface is now possible on the BrightSign device. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague from BrightSign, Frank Pisano, who's going to kick things off and introduce you to the world of BrightSign.
Well, thanks, Jeff. That was a great introduction. We're really excited to be here with Intuiface today. Appreciate all of you getting on the call. Hopefully everyone's staying safe and healthy amongst all this. And really, hopefully, get a chance to educate you today on this new partnership. So as Jeff mentioned, I have Pierre and Romeo here with me today. And we're going to go and give you guys a little bit of an update on BrightSign for those that don't know, and then take a deeper dive even for some folks that know, maybe give you some fun facts that you didn't know prior. So first and foremost, the BrightSign platform is really all about being a purpose-built media player for the digital signage market. So this is a product that's been designed and manufactured specifically for signage. We are known for our reliability, extremely affordable, very high quality output, and it's the worldwide market share leader since back in 2013. So we keep good tabs on the marketplace. We have over 1.5 million of these little purple boxes out there across 130 countries. So some fun facts you may not know is we were founded as part of Roku, thus the purple color. And more importantly, that really gets us the economies of scale and some of the attention of these component manufacturers to keep our products extremely affordable and us making sure we have plenty of product out there for the marketplace. So Both Pierre and I work for Jeff Hastings, our CEO and the visionary behind BrightSign. And we are a worldwide organization, so we offer the worldwide or global sales, service, and support. And then because of where our offices are located, it virtually gives us some 24/7 support of our partnership. You can go to the next slide, Jeff. So my job, the sales team for the Americas is out there to support our partners. So we have 10 people throughout the U.S. that really focus on the territories. That's all partners, dealers, our specialty value add partners, and then our partnerships within the digital signage ecosystem. We have somebody specializing in the Latin America market, somebody that's over all of our distribution partners. We have a retail specific team that handles a lot of our high-end retail projects. And then we have not only the territory managers, but we have an underlaying of support of our inside sales team that crosses over and inside sales champions. So we also have some training available as well. So we have that on a separate team that reports into me, and then some sales engineering resources for this team as well. Next slide would be our global support, which Pierre runs. And he has inside sales support. He has somebody specializing with Paul in the UK and William in APAC. So we are available globally to support all of our partners. The next slide will give a little bit of an understanding of how BrightSign goes to market. We are a horizontal platform. We deal with value-added folks in the marketplace to allow us to really focus on some of these specialty vertical markets. So our platform works across all of these verticals, and then we will sometimes help get some industry expertise in some of these vertical markets with our partner ecosystem. So this is a very vertical platform, but with some highly specialized vertical spots. You can go to the next slide, and we can actually show you some of the logos that we have. So the beauty of this next slide is it really does show that we deliver premium experiences across all market verticals. And mentioned previously that we have 1.5 million of these purple boxes out there. A lot of those are in these major brands. A lot of the major brands choose BrightSign because it's our ability to deliver affordable solutions. We do very well with large volume and scalable deployments. And then we are just a super reliable platform. So it reduces all operational and maintenance costs. So in many cases, it's not the upfront cost, it's the cost of what this unit's going to be over the life of the product, which allows us to be very, very aggressive because in many cases, it's a set it and forget it product. So you can go on to the next slide, Jeff. So we'll go through our players, our lineup a little bit and give you the BrightSign advantage on the next slide. So again, going back, it's just a purpose-built device for signage. So what that allows is it's a solid state appliance. It's a non-PC platform, so it's super reliable. There's no moving parts to fail. So once you take it out of the box and set it up, there is a very good chance that product is going to last for a very, very, very long time. It is a commercial grade operating system. So this is not a consumer operating system. So it means that, we are meant to run 24/7. Everyone, I'm sure, has seen that blue screen of death that we call it, which is, maybe a player wanting an update that it's not the right time. During signage, we want to make sure that product is super reliable. Bad signage is actually noticed way more than even good signage. So we want to make sure that we avoid that blue screen of death. It is a leading edge technology, but more importantly, we'll talk about our BrightSign OS and what we're doing to give real-time health and player controls, which is part of what we'll show a little bit today when Romeo does his demo. But more importantly, regular updates, it's constantly being updated. We're trying to future-proof the investment, and we're very aware of the market demands that are going on. So we have a large team of people working with our ecosystem partners, making sure we're constantly updating for the best of class in the market. Not only does the product look super cool, it's a very slim purple box, fits very nicely behind displays, but it's really built for harsh conditions. So these can go in kiosks. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and it can handle living inside a kiosk in some of our crazy operating temperatures, and it can also handle and withstand extremely cool temperatures as well. So next slide will give you a little bit of an analogy. I remember one of my first appointments where Jeff Hastings, our CEO, kind of gave this analogy, and it really stuck with me. But you can make a piece of toast in an oven. When you do that, that oven needs some time to preheat. It could cook anything. It requires a lot of energy, but more importantly, it needs to be watched and tended. Possibly has to be open, check that piece of bread, and maybe even flipped a few times. Now, when you're trying to make toast, or the analogy is for signage, with a BrightSign, it's a purpose-built appliance. It's meant to be doing signage. That's all that this product is meant to do. So install and setup are easy. It requires little energy. It's super reliable. Very little monitoring. If any monitoring needs to be done, it can be done remotely. And it makes the perfect piece of toast, or provides that perfect signage every time. So it's a good analogy. It's a good takeaway for some of you folks that are looking to BrightSign and really trying to figure out what the real difference is this is a purpose-built appliance specifically for digital signage. You can go to the next slide, Jeff. The player lineup, we have BrightSign has a full suite of products. Where we are worked really well with Intuiface is on our flagship product, is the XT1144. A lot of high-end digital signage providers are using the XT1144 anyway, because it does future-proof your installation. It's our flagship, as I mentioned. It allows serial dual USB ports and provides an HDMI input as well for live TV playback. But most importantly, this is our biggest engine, if you want to look at it that way. It's the flagship product that we put. Most of our partners are using the XT1144 because the product could be around for many years. So we might not know what your signage is going to be 3 or 5 years from now, but this product is going to be able to handle even the most extensive signage applications. Go to the next slide and we'll get into a little bit more of our BSN.Cloud platform. So the BSN.Cloud platform is relatively new, just introduced really, I think it was at ISE where it was the official launch of it. But this puts users in direct control of their players at the Control Cloud level. It is free. It's extremely secure, and it's scalable for connect all BrightSign players to the cloud. So the beauty of that, not only being free, but it allows real-time access to player health and controls at any time. And then what we will talk about a little bit more and show you a demo of is how we streamline that player setup for Intuiface. Real simple provisioning that Romeo will go through here shortly. The value of our partnership with Intuiface, we're really excited about. Not only what Romeo will show you here soon, but really gives the best of both worlds to our partners. So the reliability and the purpose-built media player with Intuiface's awesome platform really does give the best of both worlds. So our partnership, we're extremely excited about. It's been great working with Jeff. Not only a great product, but they have great people. But we'll continue to grow this partnership, add additional features and functionality, and more importantly, just kind of work on what keeps up with market demands and what customers like you guys are demanding from both of our platforms. So right now, I'll pass it over, or maybe Jeff can pass over controls to Romeo, and we'll go through some of the player provisioning.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
We got you.
We hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to provision a player using the Control Cloud, the BSN Control Cloud. So the first thing to do is to go to control.bsn.cloud. Okay. Once you're there, request a new a new account by clicking on New User. When you do that, you fill in your email address, your password, and then you'll need to verify your email. Once you've done that, you enter your credentials in here, and then you sign in. Once you sign in, you'll be presented. So if you are associated with multiple network, you select the network that you want to set up the player for, then click Next. And here we are on what we call the dashboard. So on this dashboard, I can see how many of my players are online. So if I click on here, I'll get a list of all the players which are online on this particular account. So now if we move on to how do I provision a player for Intuiface, the first step is to click on the device setup, so which is the icon right here. When I'm on that particular page, first step is to enter a package name. So we could call that Intuiface Pack 2. We put a device name, so that could be on generic install, for example. Then on this section here, under partner application, click on the drop-down menu and then select Intuiface. Once you've done that, you can then add this package to the library. So this is the setup file that is added to the library. So once I've done that, this takes you to the library page, and you can see that the pack 2 is right there. So now that I've created this package, I can assign that particular package to my players. So in order to do that, I go to my admin page, click on device provisioning. From device provisioning, I click on add. Let me just move that. I guess that's a bit in the way. So click on add device here. Enter the serial number of the player. So the serial number of the player is on the actual player, right? It's also on the box. So before you actually do anything, I would suggest that you go through that step. And so you enter the serial number here, then the device name and the device description are optional, but in order for you to keep track of what you're doing, I think it's a good idea to enter those. So once you've done that, the player will appear in a provisioning list. So I've only have one player here. In order to apply a setup to a player, you select the player first. You can do multiple setups. So if you had multiple players, you could select which one that you want to apply this particular package to, and then select Apply Setup. Then you're presented with the Apply Setup panel, and you can select the package that you want to apply to that player from the drop-down menu. Once you've selected it, you click on Apply Setup. Right. And once you've done that, when this player is online, so if you take a player out of the box, insert a blank SD card in that player, and connect an Ethernet cable to that player, once the player gets online, it will talk to our server and download the package which has been defined here. Okay. If you are going to be deploying more than one player and you are going to be using that same package on multiple players, you could also use the provisioning file. Actually, what we'll do is just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Let's put that here. Oh, we already got one. So if I go to my So what you would do is enter the serial number of all the players that you want to provision through the provisioning process, the device name, the setup file, and then once you've done that, you can upload. So you can have thousands of players in there. Once you've done that, you then upload that file up to the to the provisioning library, and then all the players that are listed in that file will then be provisioned with the adequate package. Okay, so that is for the provisioning process. So once a player is connected to the control cloud, you're able to check its status. So I've got a player which is currently onto which I've deployed the Intuiface package. I can see that it's online, and I can then check what we call its remote diagnostic web server. So using WebSocket technology, I'm able to directly connect to that player. So here I'm able to see what model of player I'm looking at, its serial number, the firmware that it's running. Okay, I'm able to access what we call the kernel log. So for troubleshooting purposes, if something is not quite right with the player, I'm able to review potential errors that may actually be happening with the application that it's running, or with the networking, or whatever the error may be. You also have the ability to download the log. Technical support may need that in order to troubleshoot whatever issue you may have. We have the control tab, and on the control tab you can re-provision the device. So what that means is that a player which has already been provisioned, you can re-provision that device by forcing it to re-download the package that you've defined in the provisioning library. Okay. You're also able to reboot that player remotely if needed. You have access to various settings on the player, as well as the SD card of the player, so you can see what files have been downloading. You can also review those files if you need to. You can run various diagnostics on the player, so things like view the network configuration, check that you have no problem in terms of networking and communication with the server or the internet for that particular player. DNS lookup. You can also run a Wireshark capture if you need to. You also have the ability to request a snapshot of what is being displayed by the player at any point in time. So if I click on this button here, I can see that currently the player that I'm looking at is displaying the Intuiface logging page, right? So that way you're able to ensure that whatever content is being displayed on the player is the right content, and you get that in real time. Video. So on the video tab, I have the ability to ensure that the player is connected to a monitor and that this monitor is on. Because quite often in digital signage, you may have a system that reports have been online. However, it is online, but the monitor is off, or the monitor has been disconnected. So not very useful signage at all. But with this, you're able to ensure that it is on and connected. You can also switch the monitor off if you need to. Last bit, on the advanced, you have the ability to carry out a remote firmware update. So very easy to do. You can use that to update to a production firmware, or to provide a URL where a firmware is hosted, right? So you can have the latest firmware hosted somewhere on the server. You select that, click on update, the player goes and fetch that and updates its firmware. So I would say, is there any questions that you would like me to cover on
Well,
this?
let me address a couple of things, Romeo, and then we'll open it up for questions. But thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so again, thank you, Romeo. I mean, people can see there's an extensive array of device monitoring and management capability built into Control Cloud. The BrightSign OS, again, is dedicated to the notion of digital signage, so they make it very easy to keep tabs on how things are performing, what they're doing, the status of those devices, regardless of where they are installed. So that's great news. You may have noticed Romeo did use the word player a lot. So the typical way BrightSign folks refer to their device is a player. So there's the BrightSign player, and then there's the Intuiface player. So it might get a little confusing. In our Help Center documents, we typically say the BrightSign device, for example, just to eliminate confusion. But that's why you might hear player from both of us. Let me talk about firmware a little bit. Well, first there's the Help Center article. So we do have in our online documentation, all Intuiface users are certainly familiar with the Help Center. We do have a section dedicated to our BrightSign support. The setup process, the provisioning process just reviewed for you by Romeo is here in the Help Center article about installing and licensing Player on BrightSign. So all the details are in there. We do recognize that unlike the other platforms we support, this whole notion of provisioning and setup is a little foreign to you. The advantage is you can do things remotely. So there is the remote advantage, but there are some additional steps you may not be used to. They're all highlighted here. How to create a BSN.cloud account, how to create the provisioning package, and everything Romeo just discussed. He did also mention briefly the ability to remotely update the BrightSign operating system. In other words, updating the firmware. Here's a very important point. Today, the BrightSign OS firmware, the publicly available BrightSign OS firmware, does not yet include Intuiface support. Okay, could be any day now, but as of today, if you're using publicly available firmware, you're going to have some rendering issues with Intuiface. There is a version of the firmware enabling you to use it. It is only accessible through Intuiface support. Okay. Now, of course, once the publicly available firmware is available through the BrightSign downloads page, we'll make you aware of it, and you should get your hands on it. And from that day forward, you just use the public one. But until the public version of the firmware supports Intuiface Player, you need to contact Intuiface support and request the firmware. Okay, this is on a day-to-day basis. It can change at any time, but as of today, you need to contact support. I hope that's clear. And I want to thank Frank, Romeo, and Pierre hovering in the background for presenting this information. We're very excited about this new relationship, and hopefully you're excited about the opportunity. I do now want to open up the floor to questions. Frank, Pierre, Romeo, I'll curate these questions. I'll walk through them and read them aloud. But I'm going to prep you with one question that I think people might be asking, which is how do they get one of these boxes?
So I can answer as part of the Americas, and then maybe Pierre can chime in. So we operate through a group of authorized resellers. So some of the folks on the call are probably our resellers and can get authorized to sell BrightSign products. Now in the US, we have a multi-channel approach. We go through a distribution network, and some of our resellers choose to buy direct as well. It really is what suits them better. Pierre, you may want to answer that as far as how the rest of the world works.
Yeah, well, basically we have a similar setup. We also work with channel partners through distributors as well as through resellers. So we have authorized value-added distributors in pretty much every country in the world, and then they sell to resellers. So if you have any specific questions for your country, probably the best would be to send me an email, and I'll let you know who are our partners in your territory.
I'll put the sales team up here, and in a couple moments, I'll switch over to the international page as well. So for the BrightSign group, we were asked a question if there's any constraints on which displays I can connect to the BrightSign player. Can I just pick any display from any manufacturer as long as there's an HDMI cable and a USB cable for touch? It'll work with BrightSign, or are there any constraints?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I only got part of your question, Jeff, but I believe the part I got is they don't have to worry too much about the display. I mean, if Romeo's on and fear the full question, maybe he can answer.
Yeah, I didn't hear the full question.
Let me try one more time.
That again, please.
Clear. Can any display be connected to a BrightSign box? Are there any constraints? Any manufacturer? Any prerequisites? Or
so if we're talking purely about display, yes, you can connect any display. But if it has to be touch, because I believe you do touch as well, if it's touch, then you need to make sure that the it is a HID device. But in terms of just display, just to play back content, any display will do, yes.
Okay. HID is yeah, the HID device.
Yeah,
gentlemen,
right.
we had a question about banking. A gentleman was a bit concerned that if it's a black box, there could be some issues with, a bank IT organization. Are BrightSign boxes, quote unquote, bank certified? Is there any? What's your experience with banking?
Well, maybe I can take that one, and then you can take it, Frank. As a matter of fact, we do work with a lot of banks. I could mention Bank of America, UBS, American Express, HSBC. I mean, there's a lot of banks we are working with. So we have all the security. We have many documents about security, how the players are secured, the different protocols. Those documents are available on our website. If you're interested, we can send you the links for those documents. But yeah, like short answer is we do sell thousands and thousands of units to banks, and yes, it's our players are fully secured for this industry. Frank, I don't know if you want to add something.
No, you hit it right on the head. In fact, what Pierre mentioned is a lot of examples of customers that are global customers, and one of the best parts of BrightSign is the scalability and security. So these products are super locked down. You reach out to Pierre or myself, and we can get you some of those security documents.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Thomas. Another question was, can Intuiface content be added to a pre-existing playlist with other content? And the answer is no. Player is running independently. It's, in fact, the way I understand the BrightSign box is working. You provision it with a particular content management system. Could be BrightAuthor, it could be us, could be somebody else. It's one at a time. So you cannot include us in some other CMS's playlist. It's an all or none sort of thing. You can reprovision, so you can replace Intuiface with something else, but you cannot combine multiple CMSs in the same playlist. The next question was multi-screen display. So I'm going to say that's an open issue. We don't know. We're not sure yet. So I'm going to say maybe, maybe not. To use Intuiface on a BrightSign device driving a multi-screen display. It's an open question, good question. We'll have to get back to you on that. Can the BrightSign player run Intuiface experiences without an internet connection? Yes. So certainly you need to follow the provisioning process. I won't go into the details on this call. There is sort of an offline means of provisioning as well using an SD card. But once you have the experience, which also requires a network connection to get that experience on the BrightSign device, once everything is there, it could be offline, yes. But typically the provisioning process assumes a network connection. Downloading an experience typically assumes a network connection. Once it's there, you can take it offline. There was a question about feature set. So I had mentioned that what you can do in Intuiface, you can do in BrightSign. Well, in fact, there are going to be exceptions, like you can't do Flash on BrightSign because you can only do Flash on Windows these days, right? So there are going to be sort of a subset of limitations. In our Help Center is a limitations page. So you can get a list of all of the items there. The limitations are not unique to BrightSign. They're pretty much global to all platforms that are not Windows. Okay, so there's nothing new there. There are some, and it's documented in the Help Center. There was a question about support for 3D models and animation. This is as much a question for Intuiface as it is for BrightSign. Here's what I'll say to that. As Frank pointed out earlier, the XT product line is the sort of premier product line from BrightSign. It's the highest level of performance and graphic support. Its capacity to handle that type of media is the highest. So, which model, how big is the model? These things are, it depends, right? But certainly we're on the device best equipped to enable the processing necessary for large 3D models and heavy animation.
Jeff, maybe I would like to add something about the XT. I'm not sure we spoke about that. One other feature that the XT has and that the other models don't have is that it supports PoE, power over Ethernet, so you can power the units with the Ethernet cable. And going back to your question about banks, we have seen, well, a lot of banks asking for that feature. And as a matter of fact, a lot of them are using the XT units also because they support PoE. Just wanted to add that.
Oh, good point. Thank you, Pierre. Does BrightSign support external hardware like sensors? Well, that's a great question. I feel like that was a setup question because, in particular, BrightSign has a very good relationship with Nexmosphere. I believe it's an Amsterdam-based provider of sensors and actuators. Intuiface also supports that integration, which means you can use all of Nexmosphere's sensors and actuators, connect them to your BrightSign XT device, and then work with those sensors to trigger content changes and other actions in your Intuiface experiences. So it's the easiest setup you're ever going to see for sensors and actuators is this combination of Nexmosphere with BrightSign and Intuiface. So the answer is absolutely yes.
And what I would add also, if you are interested in looking at examples of interactive experience and projects, turns out that we had many demos with Nexmosphere at ISE, and we also have a stand together with Nexmosphere at Euroshop in Düsseldorf. And we have some very nice videos that Nexmosphere made, and it's going to be online pretty soon on YouTube. Nice videos that show all the different experiences. So Jeff, I don't know, but maybe would be interesting to send the links of those videos after the call and when they are available online.
We can certainly do that. We also have a couple of videos of Intuiface with Nexmosphere. You can understand that all of these demonstrations at ISE and such sort of pre-existed the support for Intuiface Player on BrightSign. So the demos don't involve the three companies kind of working together. But conceptually, the end result will be exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Absolutely, yes.
And just for an example is we had this in our booth at ISC. You could build a lift and learn retail scenario in seconds, and you could have the BrightSign box in the middle. You could have your Nexmosphere-based RFID readers connected to the BrightSign box. You're running an Intuiface experience, and to create the integration enabling you to develop a lift and learn scenario, seconds. And I'm not kidding. So it's pretty cool stuff. There was a question about interactive functionality. If I go back to the first slide I presented, certainly with the BrightSign support, you have access to all of Intuiface's multi-touch capability. You have access to sensor integrations like those from Nexmosphere, which includes computer vision, by the way. And there are other types of interactivities. For example, keyboard is an interaction. QR codes on screen are an interaction. I believe we'll be able to facilitate some web triggering. So there's lots different kinds of human-machine, machine-to-machine interaction that will be possible on the BrightSign display through Intuiface. Let's see, public launched reactions. Let me see. I'm reading the questions. So here's an interesting one for the BrightSign folks. Is it possible to have different admin levels for access to the control cloud so that if I'm an agency or an integrator with multiple clients, I'm letting them have access to some of the control cloud capability for their player deployment, but not for other capability? Can you do that at all?
Romeo, do you want to field that one?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Yes, it's possible. So when you create an account, am I still sharing my screen? Or not?
No, but I can give it to you. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So here you can see that I am a network administrator. And so I haven't added a user, but I can actually select a different level of access for other users, right? So yes, it's possible to do that.
Some role-based access control. That's excellent. Okay. Thank you. I know I recognize this was scheduled for 30 minutes. We have questions bringing us beyond that. We will continue to answer some of the questions. We are recording this webinar. If you do have to go, you have to go. And so I want to thank you for joining us, but I will continue to walk through the questions as long as our BrightSign colleagues can stay with us. Let's see. I'm reading the questions. There's a lot of performance-related questions, but we'll only get there. You know, we've had a couple other performance questions, and you know how well it will perform and what's the capacity. And honestly, the answer is the same we've given for all the other supported platforms for Intuiface, which is, I hate to say it, you kind of have to try it. And the reason is because you can have a single image or a single set of rotating images, or you could have four 4K UHD videos running at the same time. I mean, the scale of what you can create in Intuiface is so vast, it's very hard to say how far you can go. We're going to do the best we can. We can say with confidence that the XT Series 4 meets and exceeds our minimum requirements. There is no formal benchmark we can give you. Ultimately, maybe you need to work with BrightSign, see if you can get your hands on a device to at least evaluate it. We will evaluate the other product lines, the XD, the HD, the LS. We'll see how they do. But it's difficult to give you a firm yes or no about performance and the ceiling of that performance. We'll do what we
Jeff,
can.
you hit it right on the head. If they want to reach out and work with us, we can put them in touch with the appropriate sales manager, depending on where they are in the world, and work with your reseller network on proof of concept. We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Frank. There was a very specific Intuiface question, which was about using Excel to store data and reading from the Excel file and using that to do build data-driven experiences in Intuiface. Yes, you can still do that. It's just a standard feature we support on any platform. Let's see, going through the questions. I'll use BrightSign natively. I don't understand. Somebody asked about, is it possible to use BrightSign's input and outputs natively without accessories to generate interaction? Joaquin, I don't know what that means. So if you can restate it, I would appreciate it. There was a question about interface assets on BrightSign. So for the BrightSign folks on this call, interface assets is the medium that we use to communicate with third-party data sources, business logic devices, enabling us to talk to third-party APIs. And the question is, can you create interface assets on BrightSign? The answer is yes, through JavaScript or web APIs. Sure. Yep. JavaScript or web APIs, yes, you can. Let's see. So question was, will player run on the HD series? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, we have the firmware, the existing firmware issue with Intuiface. There is no publicly available firmware supporting Intuiface. The one that is available is only for the XT product line. Okay, so not only have we not formally evaluated our performance capacity of the HD product line, there is no firmware at all supporting Intuiface player on the HD product line. So consider it a to be determined. Okay, there's the firmware issue and then also just the validation process that needs to occur. As of today, no, not on HD. So there was a question about connecting, if I have a touch display, this is a question for the BrightSign folks. If I have a touch display, there's an HDMI cable and a USB cable because that's the touch events are transmitted over the USB cable. And then I have Nexosphere sensors, which is a serial port over USB. So the question is, can I use, for example, a multi-port USB device to connect both a display and a Nexus to your sensor to the same BrightSign box? Can I have multiple USB sources for the same BrightSign player?
The answer to that is yes. You just plug in a USB hub. Yes.
Okay. There you go. Plug in a hub. There was a question about XT4 versus XT3. So that's a firmware issue. So again, from a performance perspective, we're fairly confident the older XT3 will also meet and exceed our minimum system requirements. But there's the open firmware issue. The firmware we expect currently is for XT4 only. So we still have to see what we can do about XT3. Running through just a few more questions, it looks like. Let's see. It's fine. It's within the USB. No support for GP. Yeah, that's correct. 2 ports. Gentlemen, I think we have all the questions answered. I know some of you did ask other questions. They were very technically specific. My suggestion is you just contact Intuiface directly, and we can answer those questions for you. I wanted to thank all of you for turning out. These are troubling and somewhat distracted times, and as best we can, we want to try to act as if it's just another business day, which is hard to do. But I thank you very much for joining us, and certainly Frank, Pierre, Romeo, thank you very much for your time and attention. We had a great turnout, and I think we had presented some really great information. So thank you to everyone for joining us, and I wish you the best of health and the best of your workday. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Great. Thank you for the call, Jeff.
Welcome. Cheers.
Cheers.